The sun was just rising, casting a soft golden light over the quiet street. The elderly woman stepped onto her porch with her cup of tea, savoring the warmth of the morning. The air was crisp, and birds sang in the trees lining the small town road. She had lived here for many years, long after her husband passed, and her days had settled into a peaceful rhythm. She loved the quiet mornings, the gentle sound of leaves rustling in the wind, and the way the sun would slowly climb above the rooftops. She sat on her wooden porch chair, wrapped in a cozy shawl, and took a sip of tea. The warmth spread through her chest, and for a moment, she let herself just breathe and enjoy the calm. Her mind wandered to memories of long-ago mornings with her husband, sharing tea and stories before the world woke. But the memories were bittersweet, and she often found herself feeling the silence more keenly than the past joy. Her house was quiet, and for many years, she had grown used to the emptiness. As she gazed out at the street, she noticed something unusual. At first, it was just a shadow, a small movement at the edge of her vision. She squinted, thinking it might be a stray cat or perhaps a neighborhood child on their way to school. But then she saw the small figure sitting on her porch steps. It was a child, very young, no more than 6 or 7. The child was shivering, their small body curled up as if trying to keep warm. Their clothes were tattered and dirty, and their hair hung in tangled strands around their face. The elderly woman's heart clenched at the sight. She could not understand why a child would be here, sitting alone on her porch in the quiet early hours. She set her tea on the small table beside her and slowly stood up, trying not to startle the child. The little one did not move, only hugged their knees tighter and looked down at the steps. The woman's hands trembled slightly, not from fear but from the sudden rush of concern and worry. She had never experienced anything like this before. "Hello there," she said softly, keeping her voice gentle. Are you okay?" The child did not answer. They only peeked up briefly, eyes wide and cautious, then looked away again. There was something in those eyes that made the woman pause. They were fearful, yes, but there was also a glimmer of hope, a silent plea that touched her deeply. She knew that look. It was the look of someone who had been alone for too long, someone who needed help but didn't know how to ask for it. The woman took another step closer, speaking in the same calm, soft tone. "It's all right. You don't have to be afraid. I won't hurt you." Still, the child did not respond. Their small bodies shivered more as the cool morning breeze passed over them. The woman noticed that the child's bare feet were red and cold, and her heart ached. Without thinking too much, she took off her own shawl and gently placed it around the child's shoulders. The little one stiffened at first but did not resist. The fabric was soft and warm, and the child slowly relaxed into it, curling up just a little less. The woman knelt beside the child, keeping her voice low and soothing. "Do you want to come? Inside, you can have some warm clothes and something to eat." The child's lips moved as if to speak, but no sound came out. Instead, a tiny nod confirmed the woman's hope. She smiled gently and held out her hand. The child looked at it for a long moment, hesitation clear in their eyes. Finally, slowly, they placed their small, cold hand into hers. The touch was tentative, almost as if testing to see if she would disappear, but the warmth in her hand reassured them. Inside, the house was cozy. The walls were lined with photographs, small decorations, and mementos of a life filled with family, love, and memories. The woman led the child to the kitchen where a pot of oatmeal was already ready on the stove. She poured a warm bowl and added a little sugar, setting it in front of the child. The child stared at the food for a moment, unsure, then finally picked up the spoon. Each bite was slow, careful, as if testing whether it was safe. The woman watched quietly, not rushing, just giving the child time. She knew that trust could not be forced. It had to grow slowly, like a seed in fertile soil. After the child had eaten, the woman offered a warm bath. The child hesitated, then allowed her to guide them to the bathroom. The water was warm, and as the child splashed gently, the tension in their small body began to melt away. For the first time, the elderly woman saw a small, genuine smile appear. It was fleeting, but enough to make her heart lift. Wrapped in a soft towel, the child shivered as they were led to a warm room with clean clothes and a bed. The woman had prepared a small space, neat and welcoming, with a quilt she had made many years ago. The child sat on the edge of the bed, hugging the quilt tightly, and looked at the woman with curiosity and a hint of wonder. The elderly woman sat down beside them, careful not to crowd, and spoke softly. "You're safe here. No one will hurt you. You can rest as long as you need. My name is... Well, you can call me what you like, it doesn't matter. What matters is that you are safe now." The child nodded again, their small hands clutching the quilt. Tears welled up in their eyes, not of fear this time, but from relief, exhaustion, and perhaps something deeper that they could not yet name. The woman reached over and gently brushed a strand of hair from the child's face. They sat together for a long while, the silence between them comfortable and filled with unspoken understanding. The woman did not ask questions yet. She knew the child needed time to feel safe before they could speak. She thought about her own life, about the years of quiet loneliness, and realized that this child had unexpectedly entered her world, bringing with them a mix of chaos and hope. As the morning turned into afternoon, the woman made a plan. She would call the local authorities to report the child, but she also knew that she could not leave them alone. She needed to protect this small, vulnerable being, at least until help arrived. She prepared a small plate of sandwiches and some fruit, setting it on the table beside the child, who now watched her with cautious interest. The phone call was brief, and the woman spoke quietly, carefully explaining the situation. She was asked to keep the child safe and comfortable until someone from Child Services could come. The child overheard some of the conversation, and their eyes widened slightly, showing both fear and curiosity. They did not know what would happen next, but for now, the woman's presence was enough. Hours passed slowly. The child explored the small room, touching the books on the shelves, the decorations, the small trinkets that the woman had collected over the years. She watched with gentle patience, letting the child move at their own pace. Occasionally, the child would glance at her as if asking for permission, and she would nod, giving a small smile. By evening, the child had begun to speak a few words, softly, almost in a whisper. They told her their favorite color, a small thing. They liked to draw, the taste of oatmeal that they had enjoyed. It was not much, but it was enough to show that the child was beginning to feel a little safer, a little more comfortable. The woman sat back in her chair, exhausted, but happy. She had never expected her quiet morning to turn into such a profound encounter. Her heart was full, her mind alive with worry, curiosity, and a sense of responsibility. She knew that this child's appearance on her porch was no accident. Somehow, their lives had crossed at this precise moment, and something inside her knew that everything would change from now on. As night fell, the child curled up under the quilt, eyes slowly closing. The woman sat beside the bed, watching, listening to the gentle rise and fall of breathing. She thought about what the next days might bring, about the search for the child's family, about the challenges and joys ahead. But in that quiet, tender moment, she simply allowed herself to feel gratitude for the small miracle of connection that had entered her life that morning. She whispered softly, as if the words could soothe both of them, "You're not alone anymore." The child stirred slightly but did not speak. The room was quiet except for the faint sound of the wind outside and the soft breathing of the child. The woman stayed there, keeping watch, feeling a warmth in her heart that she had not felt in years. The night was peaceful, but she knew that tomorrow their story would begin in earnest, and that the small life sitting on her porch that morning would forever change hers. And so, in the stillness of the elderly woman's home, a bond began to form. It was fragile, new, and full of hope. It was the start of a journey neither of them could have imagined, a story of care, trust, and love that would grow slowly, like a small light in the darkness, guiding them both toward something better. The next morning, the sun rose slowly, spilling golden light across the small town. The elderly woman woke before the child, as she usually did, and quietly prepared a small breakfast. She arranged toast, warm milk, and fruit on a plate, setting it on the table in the corner of the kitchen. She hoped the child would eat, that the little one would feel safe enough to start the day with something nourishing. Soon she heard soft footsteps padding across the wooden floor. The child appeared, hair messy but eyes brighter than the day before. They hesitated at the kitchen doorway, glancing around the room as if testing the safety of the space. The woman smiled gently and motioned for the child to come closer. "Good morning," she said softly. "Are you hungry?" The child nodded shyly and moved toward the table. They sat down, picking at the food slowly, carefully, as if unsure whether it was really meant for them. The woman watched with quiet patience, remembering her own childhood when meals had sometimes been a luxury. She understood that trust, even in something as simple as eating, had to be earned, not demanded. After breakfast, the woman suggested they sit together at the small living room table. She had placed a stack of coloring books and crayons there the day before. The child looked at the materials with a mixture of curiosity and hesitation. Slowly, they reached for a crayon, then another, and began to draw. The first few strokes were uncertain, shaky lines on the page. But as the minutes passed, the child's confidence grew. The woman watched silently, marveling at the care in the child's small hands. She did not interrupt, did not ask questions yet. She simply observed, letting the child set the pace. Occasionally, the child would look up, catching her gaze, and a small smile would appear on their lips before disappearing again. That tiny smile filled her heart with warmth. Hours passed, and gradually the child began to speak in small sentences. Their words were hesitant at first, almost whispers, but they spoke of small things, their favorite colors, a story they had imagined, a place they wished they could visit. The woman listened carefully, encouraging gently, never pushing too hard. She knew that after the loneliness and fear the child had experienced, patience and kindness were more powerful than questions or pressure. As the morning turned to afternoon, the woman decided to take the child outside. The sun was warm and the fresh air was gentle against their cheeks. They walked slowly along the small path near her house, the child's tiny hand resting in hers. The woman pointed to the trees, the flowers, the birds singing in the branches, speaking softly about each one. The child listened, occasionally pointing to something they liked, repeating her words or asking in their soft, cautious voice, "What is that?" She encouraged them to explore, to touch the leaves, to notice the colors, the shapes, the smells of the earth. Every small interaction built trust brick by brick, and the child began to relax, walking a little taller, smiling more often. The woman felt a deep sense of joy seeing this transformation. She realized that sometimes what a child needs most is simply attention, care, and the time to feel safe in a world that may have felt unkind before. When they returned inside, the woman suggested that they try something new, reading a book together. She pulled a storybook from the shelf and began to read aloud. The child listened intently, eyes wide, occasionally leaning closer to see the pictures. As she read, she noticed the child's small hand reach for hers, seeking comfort or reassurance. She gently held it, letting the warmth flow between them, understanding that connection was forming, fragile but real. Later, the woman decided to look through some of the belongings the child had brought with them. Among the few possessions, she found a small worn notebook. The child watched her cautiously as she opened it. Inside were scribbled drawings and words, imperfect and shaky, but filled with emotion. Some drawings showed scenes of a home, a family, and places that seemed important to the child. Other pages were empty, perhaps left blank because the child didn't know what to write or because the memories were too heavy. The woman studied the notebook carefully, trying to understand the child's story. She saw hints of sadness, of loneliness, and of moments where the child had hoped for love or care but had been let down. Her heart ached for them, but she also felt a spark of hope. These small drawings and words were a window into the child's mind, and through them, she began to understand what the child had endured. With gentle words, she asked, "Would you like to tell me about these?" The child looked at her, eyes full of hesitation, then slowly nodded. They pointed to a drawing of a small house drawn with uneven lines and whispered, "Home." The woman nodded, smiling softly. "Yes, this is your home now, with me. You're safe here." The child's lips curved into a small smile, shy but genuine. The woman felt a deep sense of relief. She knew this trust was fragile and could be broken easily, but for now, the child was willing to let themselves feel safe and cared for. As the day moved on, The woman noticed that the child was beginning to show small signs of comfort around her home. They explored the rooms, carefully touching items that interested them. They lingered over a small collection of photographs, pointing to faces and asking questions. The woman explained each photo gently, recounting memories of her life, of family, and of moments that mattered to her. The child listened, fascinated, asking questions now in slightly fuller sentences. By evening, the child had begun to open up more, speaking freely about small things, a favorite game, a favorite food, and little hopes for the future. The woman encouraged each word, each sentence, each thought, showing that she valued the child's voice and presence. She understood that in these moments, she was not only helping the child heal but also building a foundation of trust and love that would grow stronger with time. As night approached, the woman prepared a simple dinner. They ate together at the small kitchen table, the child now sitting comfortably, occasionally laughing at small jokes the woman made. For the first time, the child seemed to relax fully, allowing themselves to enjoy the moment without fear. The woman felt her own heart lift, seeing that laughter and light beginning to replace the shadows of worry that had clouded the child's eyes. After dinner, she guided the child to the bedroom she had prepared. They climbed under the quilt, eyes wide but calm, and the woman sat beside the bed, watching over them. She spoke softly, recounting small stories from her own childhood, not pushing, not demanding, simply sharing her life to create comfort. The child listened quietly, and a small smile appeared once again, a silent promise that they were beginning to trust her. Before leaving the room, the woman knelt and whispered, "You are not alone. You never have to be alone again." The child looked at her, eyes glistening, and whispered a soft, almost inaudible, "Thank you." It was a small word, but it carried the weight of everything the child had experienced, the fear, the loneliness, the hope, and now the beginning of safety and care. After leaving the room, the woman sat in the living room reflecting on the day. She thought about how fragile the child's trust was, how much care and patience would be required in the days to come. But she also felt a sense of purpose, a deep knowing that this child had arrived in her life for a reason. She would protect them, nurture them, and help them grow, no matter how long it took. That night, as the house settled into silence, the woman felt a quiet joy she had not known in years. The child was asleep, breathing softly, and for the first time in a long while she felt a sense of connection that filled the emptiness she had grown used to. She knew there would be challenges ahead, that questions about the child's past and future would need answers, but for now, she allowed herself to feel the warmth of this fragile new bond. She thought about the little moments, the hesitant touch of a hand, the shy smile, the whispered words. Each one was a thread weaving together two lives, one older, one young, both in need of love and care. And in that quiet night, she realized that the child had already begun to transform her world, filling it with hope, purpose, and a gentle reminder that life could still bring unexpected miracles. As she turned off the light and closed the door to the child's room, she whispered once more to herself, "Tomorrow we will face the world together, and everything will be okay." Outside, the stars began to twinkle softly in the dark sky, a silent witness to the beginning of a story that neither the woman nor the child could yet fully understand, but one that promised hope, healing, and the power of human connection. The next morning, sunlight poured softly through the curtains, casting a warm glow over the small, tidy room. The elderly woman was already awake, moving quietly through the kitchen, making tea and preparing a small breakfast. She wanted to maintain a sense of routine for the child, believing that stability and normalcy were essential after all the fear and uncertainty the little one had faced. Soon, the child padded into the kitchen, hair still messy but eyes brighter than the day before. They paused at the doorway, looking around at the familiar surroundings, their gaze finally settling on the woman with cautious trust. The woman smiled gently. "Good morning. Did you sleep well?" she asked softly. The child nodded quietly, still hesitant to speak much in full sentences. They moved toward the table and sat down, picking at the food she had prepared. The woman watched silently, giving the child space, letting them eat at their own pace. She knew that forcing conversation or action would only create tension. She had learned that patience was the key to helping the child feel safe. After breakfast, the woman decided to try something different. She wanted to understand more about the child's past. not through pressure but through gentle exploration. She remembered the small notebook she had found the day before, filled with drawings and scribbled words. She brought it out again and placed it on the table. The child's eyes widened slightly at the sight of it, and for a moment they hesitated. The woman spoke softly. "Would you like to show me more about these?" she asked, her voice calm and reassuring. The child nodded slowly and picked up the notebook. Their small fingers traced the edges of the pages, pausing on drawings that seemed important. Some pages were filled with sketches of a home, others with stick figures holding hands, and a few with lonely, isolated figures in empty spaces. The woman could see the story of the child's life unfolding silently on the pages. One page showed a small house with uneven lines, windows drawn in hasty strokes. Next to it was a figure of a small child alone, standing in front of the house. The child whispered almost inaudibly, "Home." The woman nodded gently. "This can be your home now," she said softly. "You're safe here with me." The child looked up at her, eyes wide and uncertain, then returned to the notebook. They pointed to another page, showing two figures standing side by side. One was taller, the other smaller, and the taller figure had arms reaching toward the smaller one. "Family," the child whispered. The woman's heart ached. She knew that this child had experienced loneliness and fear, and perhaps even abandonment in a way no child should endure. She reached across the table, gently placing her hand over the child's. "You have a family now," she said softly. "Even if it's just you and me for now, you are not alone." The child stayed silent for a moment, then slowly nodded. For the first time, a small spark of hope seemed to appear in their eyes. It was fragile, but it was there, and the woman held onto it carefully, knowing that nurturing this hope was as important as providing food or shelter. Later that day, she decided to take the child on a short walk around the neighborhood. The sun was warm, the air fresh, and she hoped that a small change of scenery would help the child feel more comfortable with the world outside the house. They walked slowly, hand in hand, stopping occasionally to look at flowers, watch birds, or simply enjoy the gentle rhythm of life in the quiet town. As they walked, she began to ask gentle questions about the child's past. "Do you remember where you were before you came here?" she asked softly. The child looked down at the ground, small hands fidgeting nervously. For a long moment, no words came. Then in a soft whisper, the child said, "Alone." The word hung in the air, simple but heavy with meaning. The woman's heart tightened and she squeezed the child's hand gently. "You don't have to be alone anymore," she said. "I will be here for you." They continued walking, and the child slowly began to speak in small bursts. They told her about small details, places they remembered, meals they had eaten, and moments when they had been scared. Some memories were happy, some sad, but each word revealed a piece of the child's story. The woman listened patiently, never interrupting, never judging, only offering comfort and understanding. Back at home, she prepared a small snack and encouraged the child to sit at the kitchen table while she made tea. The child hesitated, then moved closer, picking up a piece of fruit and taking a small bite. The woman smiled quietly, seeing that trust was growing, even in these small, ordinary moments. Afterward, she suggested they try something creative together. She brought out paper and crayons, setting them on the table. "Would you like to draw with me?" she asked. The child nodded eagerly this time, picking up a crayon and beginning to draw. The woman drew quietly beside them, occasionally glancing at the child's work and offering gentle praise. "I love the colors you used," she said softly. "This looks very happy." The child's small lips curved into a shy smile, and for the first time, the woman saw a glimmer of excitement and pride in their eyes. As the afternoon wore on, the woman decided to gently explore the child's family connections. She called the local authorities again, explaining what she had learned from the notebook and the child's tentative words. They asked for details about the drawings, the child's age, and any clues that might lead to finding family members. The woman provided all the information she could, careful not to alarm the child who was nearby. Coloring quietly, the authorities promised to investigate, but for now, the child would remain with her. The woman felt a mixture of relief and concern. She wanted the child to be safe, but she also knew that the search for family could bring both hope and disappointment. She resolved to be there for the child through it all, no matter what happened. That evening, they prepared a simple dinner together. The child helped in small ways, passing utensils, washing vegetables, and arranging plates on the table. Each small task was a step toward building confidence and a sense of belonging. The woman encouraged every effort, praising even the smallest successes. She could see that the child was beginning to feel useful, important, and part of a family for the first time in a long while. After dinner, they sat together in the living room. The child held the notebook in their lap, and the woman asked if they wanted to share more stories. Slowly, the child began to speak about moments from before, moments of fear and loneliness, but also moments of small joys. A sunny day, a favorite snack, a song they liked. Each memory was a thread, weaving the child's past into the present, helping her understand their experiences more fully. The woman listened with patience, never pushing, never judging. She simply offered comfort and understanding, allowing the child to tell their story at their own pace. She could see how much courage it took for the child to share even the smallest details, and she honored that courage with gentle words and a warm smile. As night approached, the woman guided the child to the bedroom. They sat together for a while, reading a story aloud. The child's small hand rested in hers, and she could feel the trust growing, fragile but steady. When the story ended, the child curled up under the quilt, eyes heavy with sleep. The woman stayed beside the bed for a few moments longer, watching over them. She thought about the day, the small steps forward, the moments of trust, the beginnings of hope. She knew that healing would take time, that the child's past would not be forgotten quickly, but she also knew that with care, patience, and love, the child could begin to feel safe and happy again. Before leaving the room, she whispered softly, "You are safe now. You are not alone." The child murmured a faint, almost inaudible "thank you" before drifting into sleep. The woman sat quietly in the living room, reflecting on the events of the day. She thought about the child's courage, their resilience, and the way they were slowly opening up to the world again. She felt a deep sense of responsibility, but also a profound joy. For the first time in years, her life felt full of purpose, of meaning. She knew that the journey ahead would have challenges, but she also knew that together they could face anything. As the night grew darker, the woman went to her bedroom, leaving the door to the child's room slightly ajar. She lay in bed, thinking about the child's drawings, their whispered words, and the glimmer of hope she had seen in their eyes that day. She knew that the child's past was filled with pain, but she also knew that the future could be filled with love, safety, and happiness. She closed her eyes, feeling a quiet determination settle over her. No matter what challenges came, she would be there for the child, guiding them, protecting them, and helping them heal. And in that moment, she felt a profound sense of connection, a bond that had begun to form between two lives that had both known loneliness but were now finding comfort in each other. Outside, the town lay quiet under the blanket of night. Stars twinkled softly in the sky, silent witnesses to the beginning of a story that was only just unfolding. The child slept peacefully, dreaming perhaps of a world where they were safe, loved, and cared for. And the woman, lying in her own bed, knew that the days ahead would bring more challenges, but also more moments of trust, joy, and connection. For the first time in a long while, she felt hopeful, not just for herself, but for the small child who had appeared on her porch, changing everything in ways she could never have imagined. The next morning, sunlight spilled through the curtains in warm golden streams. The elderly woman had already begun her daily routine, preparing breakfast and tidying the small kitchen. She wanted everything to feel steady and predictable, knowing that routine could help the child feel safe. The child appeared soon after, rubbing their eyes and yawning, hair still messy but a little brighter and more alive than before. "Good morning," the woman said softly, smiling. "Did you sleep well?" The child nodded quietly, their small hand brushing against the table as they moved closer to their breakfast. The woman watched them carefully, noticing how they were beginning to eat with more confidence and interest. Each bite, each small movement, was a sign that trust and comfort were slowly taking root. After breakfast, the woman suggested they go outside to the garden. Spring had arrived, and the small garden behind her house was bursting with color. Flowers of every shade swayed gently in the breeze, and the air was filled with the scent of blossoms and fresh grass. The child's eyes widened as they stepped outside, taking in the vibrant colors and the sounds of birds singing in the trees. The woman guided the child slowly along the garden path, pointing out the flowers and explaining their names. "This one is called a daisy," she said, kneeling down to show a small white flower. "And this one is a tulip. Don't they look happy?" The child bent closer to inspect the petals, reaching out carefully with tiny fingers to touch the soft edges. They smiled for the first time that morning, a wide, unguarded smile that lit up their small face. The woman felt a rush of joy, seeing the child's cautious curiosity turning into genuine wonder. They spent the morning planting seeds in a small corner of the garden. The woman showed the child how to dig gently, place the seeds, and cover them with soil. The child worked carefully, concentrating on each step, but occasionally looking up to make sure the woman was watching and approving. "This is your garden now," the woman said softly. "You can watch these seeds grow just like you are growing too." The child looked at her with bright eyes, a small smile forming as they nodded. They carefully sprinkled water over the freshly planted seeds, their tiny hands shaking slightly from excitement. The woman knelt beside them, gently guiding their movements, praising each effort. She could see that the child was learning not just about gardening, but also about patience, care, and nurturing. Lessons that went far beyond the soil and seeds. After a long morning, they returned inside. The child was flushed from the sun and hard work, hair sticking to their forehead, eyes bright and curious. The woman suggested they rest for a while, so she laid out a small blanket on the floor. The child lay down for a few minutes, eyes closing as they soaked in the comfort and warmth of the room. When the child awoke, the woman suggested another activity. She had brought out a box of old photographs from her own life, careful to select ones that might be comforting rather than overwhelming. The child was curious, leaning over to see the images. "These are people I've known and loved," the woman explained softly. "Some of them you might find interesting. Look at the baby in this photo," she said, pointing to a picture of herself as a small child. "I used to climb trees just like you might someday." The child giggled softly, their curiosity growing as they examined each photograph. They asked questions in small bursts, their voice tentative but gaining confidence. The woman answered gently, recounting stories from her life, sharing memories of both joy and hardship. The child listened intently, occasionally pointing to a person or object in a photograph, asking about it and soaking up every detail. Later in the afternoon, the woman brought out the notebook the child had carried with them from before. They spent time together looking through the drawings, and the child began to explain some of them. The woman listened carefully, encouraging each word, each story, no matter how small. She could see that the child was beginning to process their experiences, sharing fragments of a past that had been painful, but now could be held safely in the presence of someone who cared. As the day moved on, the woman thought it was time to introduce the child to a few neighbors. She walked carefully, holding the child's hand and explaining that they would meet some kind people who lived nearby. The child hesitated at first, shying behind her, but with gentle encouragement, they stepped forward. The neighbors were warm and welcoming, offering smiles, kind words, and even small gifts, a book, a toy, a colorful scarf. The child looked at each person cautiously, then slowly began to respond, nodding, smiling, and speaking softly. The woman could see the child's confidence growing piece by piece as they realized that not all people were unkind or frightening. After returning home, the woman suggested they make a small meal together. The child helped by washing vegetables, stirring batter, and setting the table. Each small action brought pride and a sense of purpose. The woman praised their efforts gently, encouraging independence while providing guidance. The child's small hands moved with care, their movements more confident than before, their laughter filling the room in tiny bursts of joy. As evening approached, the woman decided to start a small bedtime ritual. They sat together in the living room, the child leaning against her as she read stories aloud. Each story was chosen with care, filled with lessons of kindness, bravery, and hope. The child listened closely, occasionally asking questions, sometimes resting their head against her shoulder, feeling the warmth and safety she provided. Later, the child brushed their teeth and changed into pajamas, still shy but more comfortable with the routines of this new home. They climbed into the small bed the woman had prepared, pulling the quilt tightly around themselves. The woman knelt beside the bed and spoke softly, recounting the day's activities, highlighting the moments of growth and bravery. "You planted seeds today," she said, "not just in the garden but in your heart too. Every little step you take is helping you grow stronger." The child looked up, eyes shining with trust and curiosity. They whispered, "I like it here." The woman's heart swelled. "I'm glad," she said softly. "This is your home now. You can feel safe here." Before leaving the room, she placed a hand gently on the child's head, smoothing a stray lock of hair. "Tomorrow will be another day," she whispered. "Another day to learn, to play, and to feel safe. You're not alone anymore." The child smiled faintly, eyes closing as sleep took them. The woman lingered for a few moments, watching the rise and fall of their small chest, the peacefulness that had finally begun to take root. She knew the child's journey toward healing was far from over, but she could see the changes already happening. Moments of trust, joy and hope replacing fear and loneliness. After leaving the room, the woman sat quietly in her own chair, reflecting on the day. She thought about the seeds they had planted, both in the garden and in the child's heart. She considered the steps they had taken together, small, careful, but meaningful. Each smile, each whispered word, each glance of trust was a building block for the child's future, and for her own as well. She realized that this small life, which had appeared on her porch in the quiet dawn, had transformed her world entirely. Her days were no longer filled only with memories and routine. They were now alive with purpose, connection, and the possibility of healing. Outside, the sky grew dark, the stars beginning to twinkle above the quiet town. The world seemed calm, peaceful, and full of possibility. Inside, the house was warm, safe, and filled with the gentle promise of tomorrow. The child slept peacefully, dreaming perhaps of the garden, the neighbors, or the small moments of happiness they had begun to experience. The woman sat quietly, thinking about what the coming days would bring. She knew there would be challenges, moments of fear or sadness, and times when patience would be tested, but she also knew that they would face everything together, step by step, hand in hand. For the first time in years, she felt a deep sense of fulfillment. She realized that the child had not only found a home, but had also brought light, purpose, and hope into her life. They were no longer two lonely souls wandering separately. They were beginning to form a bond, fragile but strong, that would carry them both through the days to come. As she turned off the lights and closed the door to the child's room, she whispered one last thought into the quiet night. "Together we can face anything. You are safe, you are loved, and you are never alone." Outside, the stars shone brightly as if watching over them, silent witnesses to a story of trust, healing, and the transformative power of care and kindness. The journey was far from over, but both the child and the woman had taken important steps toward a future filled with hope, love, and the promise of many more mornings like this one.